It's November 10th, 2018, and I walk into the music room at Cal State Long Beach, a room not too dissimilar from any other college room. Sure, tables all lining the same direction, a whiteboard that spans the length of the room. Only in the center, there's a black baby grand piano. And behind the ivory keys, a frail, gray-haired, sunken-faced man, bespectacled, with a raspy voice that one might have while taking medication that you would take for the end stages of cancer. Surrounding him were books piled high, music by Verdi, Strauss, and a little bit of Sondheim. And on the piano, a torn open bag of Twizzlers. This was my teacher, Tim McDougall. And so, as I walked towards the all too familiar and all too comfortable curve of the piano, I pulled out the music I had selected for this lesson. Now Sleeps the Crimson Petal. I didn't know this at the time, or maybe I did and I just wasn't prepared to face it, but that this would be my last lesson. But let me take you to my first lesson. In high school, I wasn't really considered much of a studious individual. I was far more interested in entertaining crowds of friends than I was in getting good grades or into honors classes. But I had a secret fear that had plagued me for as long as I could remember. And it was a fear of living a life of unimportance. I was terrified that at the end, I wouldn't have meant anything. And I hid it through a big, boisterous personality. I struggled finding my own voice. I felt like my future was written and being built behind this giant wall with the words "under construction" written all over it. And I would always seek my own self-worth by the validation of others. I had to hear from other people that I was good at something for myself to believe that I was good at something. And so, in 2001, when convinced by a friend, I took my first voice lesson. Now, I went to an arts high school, so the room was a little different than you might expect a typical classroom. Sure, there were all tables lining the room, but on those tables, computers and piano keyboards, because this was a room where students learned how to read and write music. And in the corner was this terrifying black baby grand piano. And behind that piano, a man with a confident posture, jet black hair, he dyed it, no glasses on his face, surrounded by music books and CDs with names on them I could not even pronounce. And on the piano, a torn open bag of Twizzlers. So I walked towards this terrifying curve of the piano, and I clenched it until my knuckles were white as I began to go through vocal exercises. His technique terrified me. He would point out everything I did wrong. We would do range testing to see how high I could sing, to see how low I could sing. He would point out every single thing I did wrong, and the things he didn't point out, his facial expressions did a fine job of that. So imagine taking a lesson where you find out that you breathe incorrectly. That was Tim. I was sure that this would also be my last lesson. I mean, I was terrified. But then he did something. He asked me how I felt. He began pointing out things about my voice. He said, "Did you hear that? That's resonance. That's beautiful. Oh, do you hear that? Let me talk to you about tone quality." He started pointing things out. Now, Tim was a true expert in voice, and I was searching for mine. So I came back week after week, growing more and more comfortable with that curve as I gained confidence in my voice. Now, Tim was a true teacher of the classical bel canto style that had become so famous by all the greatest opera singers that have ever lived. And I was just lucky to live in his orbit. I mean, here I am, a high school student, 17 years old, a little thinner and less hair on the face, or more hair on the face, less hair on the head, vice versa. And I barely knew that Phantom of the Opera was an opera. But little did I know that one day I'd be able to perform on some of the greatest opera stages that have ever been. So, as I'm gaining confidence in my voice, as I'm working through things, I had a few things going for me. I had 3 things going for me. One, I was pretty good at memorization. I was pretty good at mimicking. Il mio tesoro intanto. And I was gifted by being a male in a highly competitive, female-dominated art form. And as I was gaining confidence in my voice, I started to hear from people that I was good at it. People would tell me how good I was at this. And I started feeling like maybe this is what I've been looking for. This is what purpose feels like. This is what it means to have a life of meaning, right? I found it. There's my voice. That must be it. And Tim would always take me back to the lessons. He'd always take me back to the voice. He would remind me, he would say, David, the voice is a muscle. It requires exercise, and it requires care. So, fast forward, I graduate high school, and bam, I'm a professional opera singer. Without even going to college, I get into my first opera. I'm in Verdi's Aida, and I'm the youngest person in the chorus. And this is with Opera Pacific, one of the top 10 opera companies in the United States. Wow, I feel great. People are, again, I grew my own confidence by other people telling me if I was good at something and then what I should do with it. And people kept saying, David, you're good at this. Here's what you should do with it. But Tim, his approach was different. He would always say, well, how do you feel? Well, I feel good. They say I'm good at this. Isn't that what you're supposed to be saying? I mean, this is my purpose, right? They say it is. This is what it's supposed to feel like to mean something. So more opportunities come my way. I get opportunities to perform in roles and travel the world. Heck, I even get to perform in Carnegie Hall. But I always had this tugging feeling that something wasn't enough, that something wasn't right. And I would silence that voice. I would constantly say, well, how dare you feel this way? Your life is so privileged. You get to travel the world. You get to get paid to sing. You have no right to complain. Well, I would continue to silence this voice while continuing to perform until one day I gained the courage and the confidence to march into my voice lesson with my courage and look him in the eyes and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to get married, have kids, and I want my purpose to be about something else. I froze. I was terrified to look over at him because I was confident that that signature scowl would return to his face. But it didn't. Instead, there was kindness on his face. And he looked at me and he said, are you sure it's how you feel? And I said, yes. I just never wanted to let you down. I never wanted to let anyone down. And he told me something. He said, David, you can't let any of us down. You can only do that to yourself. He's like, you see, this was never about you becoming a professional opera singer. When we met, you were looking for your voice. Do you feel like you have one? Yes. He said, then use it well. And then he looked at me and he said, do you want to keep singing? And I said, yes. We finished our voice lesson. And our relationship changed forever that day. I took fewer lessons until finally taking none at all. But our bond grew deeper. His words became more meaningful. And all of those lessons, all the poignancy that I learned about the operatic voice carried over into everything else I did. I realized that they rang true. And all I kept remembering was his call to use my voice well. So, as I'm gaining strength in my voice, as I'm learning to use it and use it well, I start finding that voice through advocacy. My work in nonprofit, my ability to help raise money for critical programs to serve marginalized communities. I found my purpose. Tim helped me find my voice. Now, Tim was diagnosed with a vicious form of cancer that would take the better part of 10 years for him to battle. And as I watched him weaken, and I watched him collapse into himself, my voice was growing and was becoming stronger. You see, the thing that kept Tim alive was teaching. What kept Tim alive was music. And I desperately wanted that back. I wanted that life that he had. I wanted to see it and be a part of it. So I remember calling Tim. I pull out my phone and I say, Tim, I want a voice lesson. I just want to dust off the pipes, see what I can do, make sure that I'm still able to do it. So here I am in the music studio at Cal State Long Beach, where I sing the song that I've never sung before in front of an audience since that day. Now sleeps the crimson petal, now the white. Nor waves the cypress in the palace walk, nor rings the goldfin in the palfrey font. The firefly wakens, waken thou with me. Now folds the lily all her sweetness up, and slips into the bosom of the lake. So fold thyself, my dearest thou, and slip into my bosom, and be lost in me. Exactly 4 months to the day after that lesson, Tim would slip into his forever sleep. And like that song, he also slipped into me, because I hear his voice in everything that I do. Anytime I question the strength of mine, I hear his, making that call to use it and to use it well. You see, Tim helped me find my voice, and I found its purpose. Tim passed on March 10th, 2019, but not before a sea of people whose lives he's changed. A sea of people whose voices he's helped find, many of whom don't sing anymore, many of whom do. But all of them found their voice and came to pay tribute to the man who changed their life. And one of them was once a young, boisterous young boy, thinner, less hair on the face, more on the head, who now knows his purpose, and that's to help other young people find their voice. Thank you.